So welcome back to another edition of the Heart to Heart podcast. My guest today is Dr. Ira Price. Dr. Ira Price is an emergency room physician. He was a medical cannabis physician, which we're going to chat a little bit about today. He also just got back from Israel, so we'll probably chat about that a little bit. And he's been on the show, I think this is your third time. So yeah, I think you're my first guest that I've had on here 3 times. I think I had Nicole Hodges on here 3 times.
Oh,
But
Nicole Hodges.
Always with, not always, but she's been on with someone else. So you're my first solo.
Hey.
Yes.
Firsts are always most fun. Or, I don't know. Hold on. That came out really wrong, but you know what I mean, right?
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying.
Got back from Israel. What were you doing over there?
You know, wow. Israel is a really amazing country. So I was in Israel because my new company, New Era, I think I've spoken to you about it before, actually. The socially responsible biopharmaceutical company that we started. Have I spoken to you about it?
Not too much, actually. I think you mentioned to me once, maybe on the phone, but I don't think you ever got into it, you know?
So yeah, about a year ago, maybe even more now. It's been going on for about 3 years. I guess it's time to talk about it. Most people don't really know about it. So about 3 years ago, we started on an endeavor to map the entire cannabis chromosome, okay, which is done. And the goal initially of mapping it was in order to create a new way of producing cannabinoids that the pharmaceutical industry can interact with the plant-based world and the natural health world, and that was through biosynthesis. So in order to do that, if you want to biosynthetically produce cannabinoids, you have to map the entire chromosome, because you got to know which genes there are involved with it so that you can reproduce them through either bacteria or yeast or something of that sort. Up to this point, there are companies that have individually attempted to develop like single pathways for biosynthesis, which is through like, let's say they wanted to create THC, or they wanted to produce CBD, or one of the other cannabinoids, or even any of its any of the other constituents of the plant. In order to do that, they've attempted to do one pathway, like purely for THC or purely for CBD, and it's very difficult. So we've actually taken a different route, which we're very close to finishing, and that's we've created a common pathway. I call it like a God construct. So we've created a common pathway for which we're able to produce every single cannabinoid, flavonoid, terpenoid within the plant itself biosynthetically. So yeah, which is pretty cool. It will revolutionize the way that pharma and medicine interacts with cannabinoids, because you'll no longer require the growing of plants. It's still.
I want to ask you about a very specific cannabinoid after. But,
sure.
But go ahead and the spiel.
Yeah. So anyway, so we've done that, but in order, and then we're using that platform in order to do cancer research on using cannabinoids to treat specific cancers. Like we're starting with glioblastoma. And I mean, because my goal is ultimately, we're so frustrated. I'm sure the world is frustrated now with cancer treatment, right? We've been using the same shit for like the last 100, 200 years. And the complication, I mean, sure, there are some new like monoclonal therapies that are out there, like for cancer treatment, that are helping. But for the most part, chemoradiation, I mean, at the end of the day, it's
chemoradiation surgery for the most part. It's not that there aren't other treatments out there, like, you know, particularly for like breast cancer and stuff.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I'm like
stuff like, but for the most part, yeah, you're right. So anyways, go ahead.
It's for the most part, chemoradiation, surgery, chemo, death. That's kind of how it goes in that order. And so we're trying to change that. And, you know, most of medicine in general tries to emulate or imitate what exists in nature. And so, and they just do it synthetically. So we're doing it biosynthetically, so it's still natural. And then we're going to do cancer research. So in order to get to that point, and in order to fund this endeavor, we create products for the natural health and wellness market, as well as for medicine. And we use purely botanical sources to do that. So our botanical sources and our partners are in Israel. So we actually are all pretty much terpene based, which is really cool. I mean, I think my newfound love is understanding terpenes, which honestly I feel like terpenes are the therapeutic like gods of plants. And
Yeah, I love terpenes. I mean, I take them. I'm part of a company, you know, that makes terpenes called Terpwell, and you know, I use our products, and I think that they can add like tremendous benefit to the to the cannabinoids.
100%. So I created a product that it's called Cold Aid, but we're renaming it Terp Aid. And it blocks like interleukin 1, 3, 6, TNF, interleukin 12, all of the important things involved with COVID. And it like basically it's I think I've told you before when I had meningitis, it like from, you know, after I told you about my vaccine and story, right? And so so like that's what I took, and that got me out of the hospital. And so our partner that creates a specific part of the terpene formula happens to be in Israel. So I went to Israel, and honestly, Israel is gorgeous. I think everybody might hate me right now, but both sides of it's a very complex country, right? The whole region is like super, super complicated. And like, I mean, I stayed in Tel Aviv, which is probably one of the most like open societies I've ever seen in my life. Really, like you go there and, you know, like you're accepted whether you're, you know, transgender, fucking straight, fucking gay, bisexual, whatever it is. It's like a community of like just everybody who just want to live their life and like in peace. And whether you're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, fucking Baha'i, it doesn't matter. Like this society is so fully open, and the process of democracy like is just so apparent in this one city of Tel Aviv, and it's gorgeous. It's a beachside like community. It's stunning. But I happened to be there at a time when, like, you know, last week you heard there was an attack. A terrorist attack in Tel Aviv, like in a very well-known community, like a tourist community. And I happened to be there. Like I was like, I'm super lucky. I was there like 2 hours.
What was the nature of the attack?
The nature was 4 guys came out with guns and just started blazing.
How many people did they get?
They killed 3 and injured 8.
Okay, pretty significant.
Yeah, pretty significant. I mean, there's probably more injured, but I mean, that's the last I heard. But you know,
how close were you to it when it was going on?
Well, I left I left there 2 hours before it happened, and and I was actually back in my hotel
area. You mean, or left?
Oh, I left that block.
A specific block.
Yeah, it was a specific block called Dizengoff, and I was there having dinner with one of the vendors that I work with. And then we left, and I went back to my hotel, and I was gonna go back out because I wanted to go back to that area. That's where like a lot of the nightlife, and it's really kind of fun over there. And then fucking sirens, it went like nuts. I went to bed, but like, I mean, I probably like it's crazy. You know, it was super intense. But you know, the craziest thing is like the next day, by the next morning, everybody's back out on the street partying and enjoying life again. And like, not like as if nothing happened. They were doing, you know, they had a memorial set up now, but people were living their life again. You know, I remember when we had that attack here in Toronto on the Danforth, you know, for like months, people were like shut in their houses. You know, we live in such a bubble here.
Is that the ban attack, or are you talking about something different there, dude?
Which one? The one on the Danforth that happened like 5 years
I don't know.
ago?
I don't know if it was on the Danforth. I don't know the area. I know it was in Toronto area. There was a guy who like ran over a bunch of people in a van. Is that what you're talking? Was that on
no? That I think that was a different time. No, this was a guy I think that came out with like, I don't even think it was a gun. Maybe he had a knife. I can't remember. Just went around stabbing people. You know, but it's interesting how like it's really weird. Like, how do you, the kids that like, you know, perpetrated this attack were like no more than 25 years old. And, you know, I'm thinking to myself, what kind of, you know, like how are you brought up in order to like want to do something like that, and then for it to be like, and then for other people to be like, yeah, wow, this is so good that you did something like that, like murdered people, you know. It's such a complicated situation because, you know, Israel is a democracy. For all the amazing things that it has, it's a democracy.
What was the point of the attack, though? Did they say?
Well, it's the same thing as always, right? Israel's the occupier of land, which it is. Let's not be like, I mean, I think there's fault on Israel's side too, for better or worse. But I mean, I don't think murder is the answer in the way out of this situation. There's always terrorist attack going on because, you know, it's a fight. It's weird. It's a fight between the Palestinian people and the Israeli military, which occupies parts of Palestinian territory. And I'm not going to go into a whole fucking history. So that's like a whole history lesson. The bottom line is like, it's just so fucking crazy to me that people, that in our day and age, like we have, there has to be some sort of solution, you know. Like I'm sitting there, I'm a tourist, or I'm visiting this country where I could have just been, you know, a country that's gorgeous, that you're like, you know, there's no, the rule of democracy stands. There's no like religious law where you can't, you know, like women don't have to cover their hair, and women like can, you know, be in bikinis on beaches. Dudes can go to like you could go topless. Nobody cares what you do in this city. And then you have something like that happen. It kind of just like, it kind of shakes you up a little bit. So it was a little shaky. I got to fucking tell you, it was a little shaky. But so like on the Israeli side, you have like this amazing
comparing
democracy.
to how Canadians would have reacted to that to Israelis, like what is the difference, and why do you think there is such a difference, if there is one?
A difference in which sense?
A difference in how we would react. Like you said that the next day,
you would be shut in. Like, so it's interesting. People have to learn how to live their lives. People don't live in fear. The idea is to create fear. That's what like all this crap is about. They try to create fear.
So why do you think though that in Israel that they react like that, and why do you think that we would react in Canada?
Well, because one, we're very insular and live in a bubble here. We're not used to stuff like that. We don't realize how the rest of the world is, and in Canada, where our biggest problem is, you know, I can't fly because I don't have my vaccination. You know, like their biggest problem is, am I gonna, you know, is somebody gonna try to shoot me because I'm Jewish tomorrow? You know, like it's very different. So these guys, and they're used to this stuff. So by the next day, like these are people that live their life. They don't forget, but they don't dwell. And I mean, I just take that as a life lesson in general to, you know, you never have to forget, but you shouldn't dwell on the past. And you can learn from it, but dwelling on it isn't going to get you anywhere. And that's really how these people live their lives. I do want to say though, like, for all the amazing things like about Israel, I mean, there is still injustice happening there, right? You have a certain group of people, like the Palestinian people, that are unfortunately treated very poorly, and for whatever reasons it is. And so these things have to be, you know, it doesn't condone murder at the end of the day of innocent people who are just trying to enjoy their lives. But it's so complicated. And I think both people just want to live in peace, and they just haven't figured out how to do it yet. Yeah. So anyway, but what I can tell you about Israel, like these guys are so far ahead of us technologically, and even like when it comes to tech and botanicals. You said you have a terpene company, which is actually Terpo. We should take that offline, because I work, like a lot of our products have terpenes in them.
Well, why don't we give some people some advice though, just about maybe some general terpenes for some general conditions, you know, because a lot of people who use cannabis are using it for anxiety, or they're using it for sleep, or they're using it for pain. So let's say if you have, you know, sleep, a sleep disorder, you have insomnia, you have trouble sleeping, like, is there a specific terpene that, you know, recommend, Ira?
You know, people talk about beta-carotene and all this kind of jazz, and myrcene, and I you know, to be honest, there's some very heavy research going on right now. I don't want to I can mention all these terps that you know, potentially have.
People want. The people want to know. We can't just, you know, just talk.
I know.
Like, let's actually talk
I
about
can't.
specific terpenes of
I
that.
know, but talking about specific terpenes without good evidence behind it, I don't think I should talk about those things. You know,
Okay.
none of it really. Currently, my goal is to, like, what I'm working with is, functional terpenes. I know you do functional mushrooms as well, but terpenes are pretty functional as well for, like,
Wouldn't you say that, like, if you're having trouble with sleep, like, you should really
okay, so
something that's like more like myrcene based?
yeah, okay, so you're trying to push me down there, you fucking dog. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you sure, mercy, fine. Like, but does it pan out in any study? Do you have a study that you could show me that myrcene puts you to sleep?
I mean, we certainly don't have any, randomized control trials on humans,
Do you
most
have any surveys?
anecdotal, again, like, I agree with you that we don't have, the randomized control trials and a lot of the things that would,
I don't care about randomized controlled trials,
but
bro. You know
still,
that.
I mean, there's definitely some people out there that could, benefit some, just from general advice. Like, I don't think that we need, all of the data in order to at least make some, recommendations for something that's, relatively benign, right? But if you don't want to get into it,
No, I don't
worry
just
about it.
I
Okay.
don't. So hold on. So I think we're talking about two different things. I don't care about RCTs. Like, that doesn't bother me. I would take anecdotal evidence, or not anecdotal. I don't, experiential evidence, or even survey evidence. I take the best evidence that we have at hand. And I currently, I'll tell you, these guys in Israel are doing the research. So I think we are going to have answers, to these things. And I think, the terpenes play on three very important receptors: GABA, dopamine, and serotonin. And there are specific terpenes perhaps that work on those things, but until, like, these studies come out, not, and it doesn't have, they're not I would take in vitro studies. I don't need an RCT. I just need something that says, hey, this is what it's doing. Otherwise, I'm just talking bro science, and bro science, you know me, bro.
How
So
about
yes, can myrcene help you sleep? Potentially, but, like, is it in combination with beta carotene, or also with THC in there, or I don't know.
when you're talking about too, like, isolating specific cannabinoids, and I've kind of, like, stopped talking about certain specific cannabinoids just because they're not commercially available. So,
Yeah,
like,
like CBG.
2015, 2016, the one I was talking about, I think the most, was THC-V, and the reason being is because it can decrease appetite and potentially, help with weight loss overall, which I think a lot of people, would
Yes, boy.
greatly appreciate. So, the question then
Let's
becomes,
talk about it.
when can you expect that product to be available commercially for people to purchase? Because, again, like, I've seen research on this from, 24, I think it's
2015.
2010s maybe, and it's still not commercially available. Whereas, like, CBD, it seems like, and maybe we can get into why, but it seemed like we were talking about CBD, and then the next day it was available on the shelves. So, like, why aren't other cannabinoids such as THC-V available for people, and when can they expect to be available?
Bro, I'm so happy you brought up THC-V, because I think it's one of my favorite cannabinoids. The truth is, it's also a metabolite. So, like, THC will break down into THC-V when it goes through first pass metabolism, which is why it creates a very significant high, by the way. So, like, more significant than just THC on its own, or Delta 9 on its own. THC-V does create, which is why I think it's difficult to commercialize, because, like, if the people that need it, first of all, THC-V has been studied. There's some very good studies from both 2015, 2019 showing it's also responsible for glucose metabolism, and involved with decreasing hunger mechanisms. And the best study that I saw.
Type 2 diabetics, big time, it seems.
Oh yeah, type 2, not like just that, lipid profiles, cholesterol, and glucose metabolism. The study was done, actually, I may have it on my phone. You want to know the year that study was done that you're talking about? I'll find it another time. Yeah.
For the year.
I'll find. I'm pretty sure it's 2015, but those are the details. The bottom line is the THC-V has the ability to, and it's one of my favorite cannabinoids. It is good at glucose metabolism, regulate, which is regulating blood sugar. It helps lower cholesterol. It helps improve your lipid profiles. And those who use it tend to have a lower BMI than those who don't. And that was finding, and this was an RCT, it was, by the way, RCT study. Why it works is a good question, like which receptor sites it's working on specifically. Clearly it's working on the pancreas and maybe on CB1 receptors there, but it's hard to say exactly the metabolism of it, but it's hard to commercialize because, one, it doesn't exist in large quantities, so to extract it is tough. What I can tell you is we can biosynthetically produce it once we're finished our study. So, and I can, like, what takes people normally, like, to grow a plant, imagine this.
So hang on, just gonna start it for a sec. So CBD, you know, everyone who's getting that now is getting it from a plant. We can extract it in, you know, relatively, or not even.
You still have to. It's not easy. You still have to extract it.
Right, but we can do that. So with THC-V, you're saying that that's going to be even more difficult. So the best way to get that is to make it synthetically. Is that correct?
No. So synthetically is very different than biosynthetically. Synthetically is not a real process. Okay. I mean, that's like you make it in a petri dish with like you synthesize it. And then, as we know, synthesizing anything isn't next to its natural source. It's always a little different. Biosynthetically is very differently. That's through a process of fermentation. Fermentation is a natural process. You can use yeast, you can use bacteria, you can use whatever you want. Now, if you figure out the pathway, which means you've genetically coded if you know the gene that creates THC-V, and then you figure out how to put that into a biosynthetic process, it's very, very fucking complicated, but then you can produce it. You basically can turn water to wine, which is what we're doing currently. So I can take, like, let's say you have a big fermentation tank. Once I know the gene that it is, and I've created it through, let's say, bacteria or yeast or whatever, and I know it's producing, basically it poops out the THC-V, and then you have THC-V. Once you do that, you drop that specific bacteria or whatever it is into a fermentation tank, you leave it for 5 days, and the whole fermentation tank turns into THC-V. So that's what we're working on, which will revolutionize the way cannabinoids are worked with in a medical perspective. And then you'll be able to do it. It is so when it in a plant, it's super volatile. So you're going to lose it right away. You get very low doses of it. It's really hard to produce. And if you do try to produce it, well, I mean, like any agricultural production, what the fuck are you going to do? Like, it's tough to produce, right? Even making cannabis plants, any cannabis plants, you got a 14-week cycle, depending on where you are in the world. What is your ratio? What's your consistency? Then you get, you know, botrytis, and you get all this other stuff. And, you know, you get powdery mildew, you lose your crop, and then you're stuck with no crop. So it's very hard to, you know, it takes a lot of resources, a lot of manpower to produce cannabis for a legal market. So trying to get THC-V is very difficult, and it's going to be super expensive. So eventually I'll be able to produce every cannabinoid, terpenoid, flavonoid that exists, and we'll be able to put that into a fermentation tank.
So we've talked about THC-V. I'm excited about it. You're excited about it. I think, you know, a lot of people are excited about it.
It is produced. I want to say one more thing though.
But what about any other cannabinoids? Like CBG is one that seems to be a little bit more available. I think people are using that for an overactive bladder. Like, what are the main indications that people are using CBG for?
Yeah. So hold on. Just back to THC-V. We do produce THC-V from THC. It is a metabolite. So when you metabolize, if you're ingesting, you won't do it if you inhale cannabis, but when you ingest cannabis, and this, I mean, again, it's not really bro science, but it's like maybe when you ingest cannabis and it has to go through first pass, THC-V, I think, is responsible for that, like, overwhelming feeling. That's what you get. That's the THC-V. So yes, it's good for all those things, but the side effect profile may be intolerable. And how do you change that? That's complicated. What do you think? I want to ask you, what do you think, Mike? Well, you're always talking to other people. You're a smart dude.
If you know, we know that, you know, CBD is, you know, technically it's still, you know, psychoactive, because psychoactive, like caffeine, is psychoactive. It changes how you feel. but it's not like, it doesn't give you a euphoric high. So that's why it's so safe. And that's why I think, a lot of people use them. That's why it's legal a lot of places.
THC-V?
No, we're talking about, no, I said CBD.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's not psychoactive, but it's, or euphoric, but it's psychoactive. Oh, yeah. It works on it.
But THC-V, this appears, unfortunately, to have a psychoactive component to it.
It does, yes, yes.
So because of that, yeah, that's something that we're going to have to consider when, instructing patients and that kind of thing. And, just off the top of my head, one of the things that we can do potentially is obviously to add a little bit of CBD like we do to THC. So some patients, for example, with neuropathic pain in particular, don't respond that well to CBD because in general, THC seems to work better, not for everybody, but for a lot of people with neuropathic pain. And for some of those patients, if they use CBD in conjunction with the THC, sure, they may feel a little bit psychoactive, but not to the point where it's detrimental, and certainly not to the point, for a lot of patients where the benefits don't outweigh the risks. So, if we can do that with CBD and THC, then that may be one thing that we can do to negate some of the psychoactive effects from the THC-V that you're talking about. But maybe we'll have some other techniques and other things that will come out that'll also assist with that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's hard. Like that's the problem with cannabinoids in general, or like with THC in general. For them to, I think for THC to work, or THC to actually work well, THC-V, you need these high doses. And to get to the high doses, you have to go through the euphoria. Some people like it, some people don't. It's the tough, and that's what makes it, like, that's the rate limiting step in there. I should pretend I'm using my microphone. Hello.
It's all good. You don't need to do that. Most people are just listening.
I know. Yeah.
But going back though to
yeah.
Like, what is that specifically indicated for? Is there
for what? CBG?
CBG.
I think there's evidence coming around, CBG for attention, CBD for CBG helping with people that have attention deficit. I've seen some evidence around that right now, and clarity.
For bladder, overactive bladder as well?
I've never seen anybody use it for an overactive bladder, but it's possible. I don't know. Is there some evidence that I'm missing?
Okay, I think so. I want to fact check this, but I think that's what Ethan Russo put out in an email one time, and I think I clicked on the study and it did indicate that. I don't think it was like a randomized controlled trial, but
I haven't heard about it
to indicate. So we've talked about THC-V, we've talked about CBG. Is there any one cannabinoid that you are most excited about? Like, what's the one that you're most excited about?
I got to be honest, I'm most excited right now about terpenes. So yeah, I'm most excited, right? I honestly, like, as the more I delve into terpenes, and I'm sure you probably know more about terpenes than I do. You've got a company, which I'd love to hear about. What does Terpwell do, by the way? Do you sell terpenes or you sell formulations?
So we have terpenes, we have terpene formulations, and you can get them online and add them to your various cannabinoid products. And a lot of people do feel that they give them an extra effect. So say for the sleep products, we would have a lot of myrcene in that, for example, and then that would enhance someone's ability to sleep at night. So that's that's basically what we do.
You should get into the therapeutics of it. What I'm learning now and what I'm seeing now about terpenes, and which makes this plant even more fantastic to me, like every day, is that it contains, like, I think all the world's natural healing products or healing properties. I want to say natural. I mean, yes, it's natural, but the healing properties for all diseases are found in plants. We know that. We just don't know what they are yet. Pharma's been trying to replicate them for generations, and like I say, what they lost in tradition by creating synthetics, they gained in side effect profile. So what we're trying to do is bring it back to back to its literal roots and find what pharma's been looking for synthetically, we're looking for it botanically. And I think a lot of those answers are found in terpenes. And I think a lot of the healing properties of cannabis itself isn't just THC, CBD, CBN, CBG, all this other shit, which the THC and CBD have been studied the most, but it is found in those terpenes. It goes back to.
Let me interrupt there for a second. So
yeah.
What about, because this question always.
You keep interrupting me.
Comes up a lot. Indica and sativa. So a lot of people think that these terms are complete BS, and
they are complete BS, bro.
So do you think that because we know that you can have a high THC cannabis, that can be a sativa, you can have a high THC cannabis, that can be an indica. So obviously it doesn't have anything to do with the cannabinoid profile. So do you think that this has basically 100% to do with the terpenes that are involved?
No, I actually think it has nothing to. I think sativa and indica have solely to do with the geographical location of the origin of the strain. That's what I believe it has to do with. It's funny. I did this talk yesterday. I did a talk yesterday for my friend at Lolly Cannabis, and one of the questions that came in over the internet was, "What do you think about, sativa and indica?" So sativas their origin of birth is the equatorial regions, right? That's why when you see the plant, they have these long leaves, they're tall, they fought for sunlight against all the other big ass trees in the rainforest, and they have to and they have these long leaves so the water can fall down to the roots. And then you've got those indicas and we know that the more sunlight you get, the less THC, it degrades a lot of the cannabinoids that are in there. So, and terpenes are super volatile, so they're going to disappear as well. So, it's the origin of birth. Whereas then you have these sativa or these indicas, which are these small plants, which small little leaves. They come from the Hindu Kush region, and that's because it's wind blown, and they're trying they grow well here. Indicas grow well here, but we don't really have even a plant anymore. I don't think. Maybe you'd have to show me one specific landrace strain that was a pure indica or a pure sativa. Most of the stuff we have is hybrid now. What causes the bro science to say this puts me to sleep or this wakes me up? I'll show you a sativa that puts you to sleep and an indica that keeps you awake. So I don't buy into the whole sativa indica thing. Now, if we're basing it on the equatorial geographical location based on sunlight and based on cold, you will get different profiles. And those profiles can potentially or do cause different effects. But it's not like, hey, this is the sativa or this is the indica causing it. No, it's the equatorial region of its birth. Does that make sense to you?
That makes sense. Yeah, because a lot of people, still believe that, indicas are going to put you to sleep and sativas are going to keep you wide awake. So it's good to clear that up.
You know what it reminds me of? Hold on. You know what it reminds me of when we talk about sativa and indica? It reminds me of the DSM-4 or 5. When we talk about psychiatric diseases, we need a way to talk about things. How do we explain to somebody that you're crazy? He said, oh, well, the DSM-4 criteria or DSM-5 criteria. I think we're DSM-5. Are we on 6, 7, 8? I don't know where we are. I try not to look at it anymore. But the criteria for crazy is X, Y, and Z. So, okay, the criteria for this is sativa. It's a way for people to communicate. It's not super accurate, but it's a way that people can communicate.
Okay. Got it. Another cannabinoid I want to chat with you about that is more commercially available is CBN. A lot of people have been using that for sleep.
Yeah.
Any comments on that, or do you feel like there's just not enough research to comment on it, or what do you think?
So my friend, it's interesting. So sleep is a really interesting altogether. Cannabinoids and sleep are really interesting. My friend out of the University of Florida. So in Florida, he was doing research. He was doing research with both with 3 cannabinoids: CBN, CBD, and THC. THC decreases your REM sleep, right? We know that.
I know, but just to know that, I actually asked Dr. Ethan Russo about that, and he indicated to me that there's a very, very low decrease overall.
There is, but just let me finish.
Okay,
You're right.
Go ahead.
You're right. Actually, you're right. So if you look at the studies, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're actually right. There's a very decrease, and it's not in, it's in, is it NREM or LREM? It might be in your light REM sleep and not your deep REM sleep that the change is. But what I can tell you is it helps you fall asleep. What changes though isn't which is why high dose of THC help with PTSD, because that's where you dream, that's where you have nightmares and all that shit. So it decreases your decreases night terrors because you dream less, right? And REM is where you have all those big visions. And but why does it improve quality of sleep? That comes down to CBN and CBD. What it comes down to is you actually end up with one extra cycle in an overall night's sleep. So you may decrease the length of the cycle, but you get a full extra cycle. Okay. And that's because of either CBN or CBD. I think the literature's out on that, but that's really fucking cool. So you want to fall asleep. You fall asleep from the THC. You want to decrease your PTSD, not anxiety. Very different mechanisms, right? Anxiety can potentially worse with the use of THC. You'll fall asleep. You'll maybe decrease your NREM, but in an overall night sleep cycle, like the amount of sleep cycles, let's say people get 7 cycles a night. I don't remember the number. I may be just lying on the number, but I remember the number 8 being what you've increased. You get one extra one. And that could be because of CBN or CBD, which is pretty cool. I think that's amazing.
That's very, very interesting. And also, I try to encourage basically all of my patients to use a combination of THC and CBD at night for a couple different reasons. So one of them is the one that you just mentioned. And then the other one is that, if you use continuously high THC, a lot of people in cannabis don't like to talk with this, but you can develop a tolerance for it very, very quickly. And by using a little bit of CBD, you're kind of negating some of that tolerance. So, I think there's a couple different reasons to use it, but that's great to talk about, because a lot of people, only discuss THC for sleep. Some people also discuss CBD, but there's also CBN in there, and there's also terpenes. So, there's various different ways to use cannabis to sleep. It certainly doesn't have to, come through, smoking a high THC joint. That's not what most people are doing these days. Most people are using oils, and they're using a combination of THC, CBD, CBN, and other terpenes.
What's your thought on strain cycling to avoid tolerance?
I mean, I don't know if there's that much evidence on it, but there's people out there who do indicate that. But I don't really. I think in a randomized control trial, it may fail. But if the other thing is it's the perception. So the person thinks that, they're smoking a different strain. Oh, this is going to put me to sleep. So if you think it's going to put you to sleep, it does put you to sleep, kind of thing. So you may see a placebo effect with it. But I think if you look at, the terpenes and the cannabinoids and that kind of thing, the science on it is very, very iffy. Of course, though, if you do switch, to a different strain that, is like we were saying, that is maybe higher in THC and maybe higher in myrcene, something like that, then, initially when you start using it, it may help you fall asleep. But I think that, strain rotation is, it's a complicated kind of subject. So it's, I think overall you need to look at all the cannabinoids and all the terpenes. It's a better and more scientific way to look at it, as opposed to just, I'm going to take this strain instead of, this other strain. I think look at, I'm going to take some different cannabinoids and some different terpenes versus looking at the other strain.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, I've been telling people for about a decade to do it. It does, I look at it like olfactory sense, you become nose blind quite quickly to things, right? And so if you change up the ratios of whatever you're trying to smell every couple of minutes, you'll never go nose blind. So I kind of use that as tolerance. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because THC is THC and CBD is CBD. The terpenes are really what changed the aroma anyway. So does it really matter how much? Or I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Like you said, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? Either way, I'm not going to know anymore because I'm not prescribing it.
Yeah,
I
let's
mean,
talk about that for a few minutes. Are you still prescribing or you're not prescribing? What's going on there?
you know, I'll do like private consults for people now, and maybe, and I'll help and consult for like other physicians who need help dealing with some complicated issues or whatever. But I had to focus on my new company. Like for 12 years, and cannabis took a lot out of me, man. Like when you're, and as it has you, I'm sure. But when I started, there was nobody else. There was me, and waving all the flag, doing like being on my own, where everyone's like, yeah, I'm coming in, but nobody was coming
When
in.
did you first prescribe a cannabis prescription? What was the date? Do you know?
August 2010.
August 2010. Yeah, see, mine was more like February of 2014.
Yeah.
Basically, I was signing up people so that they could order on April 1st, 2014.
Yeah, right.
You
When the
know?
MMPR started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So I was August 2010. In this neck of the woods, everybody else who had started it already had already been like shut off by a college or been threatened by the media or some patient getting angry. Nobody was really doing it here anymore. There was a couple guys, because in 2003 is when the MMAR started. So there was some docs that came before me. Most of them did it on a very like individual basis, except for one guy out. There was two people out west. There was Kevin Kinerva from the
I remember Kevin. I met him a couple times.
Yeah, man, exactly. So the guy's amazing. He gave no fucks given there. Yeah, he was the guy that was like signing people up on airplanes. I remember the first CCAC or CCIC. Remember the first CCIC conference was held here, maybe 2012, and this guy, and I met this guy, and he's amazing. His clinic was called the Do No Harm Clinic. It was just an amazing name for medicine, because who in medicine thinks about doing no harm, even though it's like our number one goal? Most people tend to like not remember it. So like, this is a guy that like gets on a plane, he's signing scripts, comes off the plane, he's like, yeah, man, I heard about you, Ira, let's go and hang out, blah, blah, blah. We're an interesting character. Anyway, so there was like him and one other guy, Shochet, I think, was out west, maybe started in 2009. And but here it was really tough. So like it took a lot, those first 4 years until somebody else tagged in, which was really 2014, was really tough. I went through like everything, investigation after investigation, media after media, patient after patient, and nobody was happy. Pretty much everybody hated me. I was too community for medicine. I was too medicine for the community. And everybody was kind of angry, you know what I mean? And so it took a lot out of me, but eventually, I got to write all the protocols and guidelines that a lot of the people used. Eventually, people that don't even know they're using my protocols are using my protocols, which is great. And I don't care. And it's wonderful. And there's a whole area of cannabinoid medicine. And it came time for me, like it's 12 years in to doing it, maybe a little bit more than 12 years. And I'm like, what's next? How can we change pharma? Like after going through COVID and seeing like the sheer idiocracy, that's not a word. Is that a fucking word? I don't know which word I'm looking for. You think of the word. I want you can whatever word comes to your mind for how medicine handled COVID.
Just frustration.
Frustration. Yeah, that's good. That's a nicer word than I used. Yeah, fine. All right. Well, you wanted, that's good. The sheer frustration factor of seeing how medicine and physicians interact with pharma, and how, and don't get me wrong, I interact with pharma. I need pharma. We all need pharma. That's like in medicine, in Western medicine, that's how we get our medicines. But seeing how easy it is to maneuver physicians in whichever direction we need to move them in, the way that pharma does it is like, I was like, something's got to give here. And then medicine, we've lost so much. The general public's lost so much trust, at least in my bubble, has lost much.
The public health messaging has been like a complete failure, and people have no trust in doctors anymore. I mean, I felt like there was less and less trust in doctors from maybe the early 2000s and in the 2010s. And I think a lot of that has to do with the opioid crisis. I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that, you know, we were so slow in getting cannabis on board as a medical prescription, and we're still, you know, don't have, unfortunately, a lot of the psychedelics available. And I think people are just really, really frustrated overall with the medical system, and unfortunately, they don't trust doctors anymore. And like, I don't know if that's ever going to be repaired. And the thing is that if you are going to repair it, it's going to require a lot of apologies. And like, anyone who's advocated for lockdowns, they should be apologizing every single day. Like, every single day they should be apologizing, and for not advocating for early treatment. Like, it's absolutely been pathetic. Like,
it has. Yes.
Pathetic.
Yes. Good. I'm glad you're like that. You're so adamant about it, because I'm so passionate about the fact that, like, medicine, you know, I went to McMaster for medical school because I believed, and that's what McMaster's, you know, whole thing was preventative medicine. Medicine is not just the absence of disease; it's the treatment of the whole person. And then you get out and fucking practice. And
school, McMaster is recognized as an amazing school.
Okay, but then you get out of school and you realize nobody else gives a shit about that in medicine. Here's your disease, here's a treatment, boom. Done. Preventative medicine doesn't exist to the way that, and so then you have a new area of medicine, functional medicine. Medicine, traditional medicine, looks at it a bunch of quackery. It's very frustrating, and it's frustrating. And why does that exist? Why is it that? And today, and this is why I'm so frustrated today. You know, I go on these doctor group chats that we have with my own colleagues, and I'm like, hey guys, you know. I've got this like natural, you say the word natural, it's already thrown away. I'm like, if anybody, because everybody's sick now, right? Everybody's got COVID, very mild, it's fine. But I'm like, listen, this, you know, it's with in vitro trials, I have like this spray that we've developed that's naturally based. It's fully recyclable. There's every blah, blah, blah. And it's shown to help minimize the symptoms associated with that come from interleukin-6 or whatever, which is associated with COVID. I'm like, if anybody wants it, it's just for you. No, not a problem. Nobody answers me. I'm like, guys, this isn't for you anyway. I'm sure none of you will uptake this at all. But I'm like, just in case, here you go. And then all of a sudden, Paxlovid conversation comes. And everybody's like, what's the algorithm for Paxlovid? How do I get my hands on this fucking like antiviral with all its side effects and all the other crap that it causes? We don't even know how much and it does work, guys. Don't get me wrong.
It does seem to be effective, though. I just want to interrupt there because in the study that was done, like compared to the placebos, they actually had less side effects, and there was less people who withdrew from the study compared to placebo, which is very rare to see.
Very rare. Yes. So I don't disagree that it works. My argument isn't whether it works or not works. I know it works. Like, we've seen it work, and it's got good studies. The idea is the flexibility of the medical mind. It has nothing to do with works or not works. It's why is it so easy to accept something that a pharmaceutical company has spent billions of dollars on, mind you, that have positioned so well, and not even question this. I can guarantee you 95% of the people that read that and are responding have not read any of the studies, because doctors don't read studies very often, right? Now there are the academics that do, of course, but a lot of people don't. I don't even read though. I'll read the abstract. You know what I mean? I'll read the abstracts, but I'll go into the details. But so why is it that the medical mind is so flexible in certain areas and so rigid in other areas? And so,
very good point.
So the outcome doesn't matter to me. It's the process at which they get to that outcome that I've been working on for so long, trying to figure out, you know, the medical mind. Now, I understand that their goal of medicine is to try to, you know, treat disease. But is that the only goal of medicine? Yes, we live longer because we have antibiotics. I can treat your diabetes so you don't have to die, but we don't have to get diabetes, at least type 2 diabetes. You don't have, these are things that are preventable with medicine. And it's not Eastern medicine versus Western medicine. There's an integrative medicine that the medical mind just somehow is like, it's like hitting a concrete block. It's just stuck.
I totally agree that a lot of physicians, as soon as they hear the word natural in any way, they completely dismiss the person. And like, while there are a lot of, you know, and again, like I know lots of chiropractors, naturopathic doctors who are really intelligent, but unfortunately there are, and are very evidence-based, but unfortunately, just like there are medical doctors, there are lots
Same
of
thing on the other side.
chiropractors who are quacks as
Are
well,
nuts. Yeah,
right?
100%.
And I think that what happens is a lot of MDs just group all of those people together, and then they automatically just assume that anything natural that's not pharmaceutical based isn't going to have high quality evidence, which is, you know, simply not true. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the pharmaceuticals are going to have a lot more funding, and they are going to have a lot more randomized controlled trials. A lot of people aren't going to fund too many you know, nutrition trials, because there's just not much money to be made there. So I think that's where the overall problem lies.
So that's where you said it perfectly. So that is where my company, and that is why I've left prescribing cannabis. So what was initially lost by pharma in tradition that was gained in side effects by using synthetics, our company is bringing back the botanical or the natural treatments using the rigorous science that pharma uses.
Yeah,
so that we can, that's what New Era Biopharma is doing. That's what we're any product or any ingredient that I put into any of our products has to be backed by science.
Yeah.
And which is even the terpene profile that I'm using is backed by in vitro studies. Everything now, do they have massive randomized control? Not yet. I mean, we were using drugs that we were using drugs for COVID that didn't have big randomized controlled trials.
But at one point, so, every single drug didn't have a randomized controlled trial. At one
correct.
point,
That's right.
Every single supplement
that's right.
in the world.
That's right.
At one point. So very important.
So we got to start somewhere, and that's what I'm trying to bring back, that responsibility to pharma and bridge the gap between the natural health world, which doesn't really have, which is seen as quackery, and the pharmaceutical industry, which is seen as money hungry, devouring monsters. And so our social responsibility is patient, product, profit. We think about our patient first, we think about our product, and our profit eventually comes. All of our products, the profits from all of our products is reinvested into our cancer research.
That's amazing. And
that's what we're doing. So
on that note too, you know, a lot of people, I know this is a very controversial topic, but you know, and I don't know how much you want to get into it today, but what about cannabinoids and cancer? Like, do you think there's a lot of promise there? Do you think that you know, we already have a lot of...
You want to know what I believe? You want to really know what I believe?
Sure.
Yeah, it may not be prime time right now, but I believe we are going to cure cancers with cannabinoids. Cure. I've seen it. I can't say that I can say as an N of 1 it worked, even on family members. I can tell you that is going to be the future of plant-based treatment for cancer therapy. That's why I'm putting...
Would that be early stage? Would that be late stage?
So currently I've seen it work in late stage specific cancers. Now, is it prime time? No. Is it going to hurt you? Like, also no. The way that I see it right now is you could give your chemo and radiation a first go, you know, your first 10 rounds of whatever, and then your surgery. If you've got a reoccurrence of that cancer, 9 times out of 10, your next round of chemotherapy isn't going to work. It's just going to kill you. And that's the goal. Most studies for chemotherapy are survival at 1 year, right? On your second round. So in that case, that's where we're starting to substitute these things with specific cannabinoids. I got to put them into RCTs. That's on me to do. And that's what we're going to be doing. I have a specific strain and a specific extract that I'm going to be using. And I've created a charity around it so people can eventually donate to this. And any product that somebody buys from New Era, the money gets donated, the profits get put right into our cancer treatment, into our cancer research. And so, like, I firmly believe that over time, and Dudi Miri in Israel is doing, there's a lot of cancer research happening now with cannabinoids, and they don't talk about it because they want to keep this shit proprietary. My goal is to find, and the goal of the people that I work with, where we get our strain from, he literally gives away, does not charge a person a fucking penny not one penny, gives away millions of dollars of his medicine to people that have been told to go home and die. They have to be told they were to go home and die first, but he will then get, like, if they're a palliative patient, he literally gives away gives it away. Like,
well, we need
go.
more people like that out there, you know, because there's a lot of people that are suffering from a lot of cancers out there, and we need more medicines and people out there to help them. And one thing too, I just want to make one.
I have to just make one distinction myself. I want to make sure that people know that this isn't prime time. I'm not telling people that cannabis is going to go and cure all your cancer. You know, that's not how people should take this. People should know that it is a therapeutic option. It has the potential, and in studies shown to minimize the symptoms of cancer, decrease tumor size through apoptosis and whatever else of specific cancer cells, and has been shown to cure cancer in very specific cancers. Is it prime time to be generalized? Not yet. Will we get there? I believe I'll be able to get there. And it's going to be time. But that's my next goal in life, is to bring back the responsibility to pharma using these methods.
Okay, and I know we only have a minute or two left, but in terms of what is prime time right now, like, it seems like what most people are comfortable with is THC for chemotherapy induced nausea and vomiting. Is there anything else that you feel is like prime time right now besides that for cancer?
Listen, I'm not going to. When the patient is told to go home and die, anything is prime time.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a palliative patient and you were saying, they said chemotherapy isn't going to work for me anymore, what do you want? It's so funny. He's going to be so happy that I'm talking about. I'm always the guy on your side yelling at him, how the fuck can you say this stuff? But if you're told to go home and die, like, or to get your things in order, there's no more we can do for you. What isn't a therapeutic option anymore? What isn't prime time? And for anybody to tell you this isn't prime time and to give you that a little sense of hope, you know, they'll say a physician's role isn't to give you a sense of hope. Well, if it's not to give you a sense of hope, I don't know what the fuck we're doing in medicine. So if, you know, maybe you'll die, maybe you won't die. That I can't tell you. But if I could give you a little sense of hope when you were told to go home and die, and maybe you live an extra month longer because you felt better about your quality of life, even if it didn't help your tumor, you're doing something good.
Yeah, I'm in the camp that if something is relatively benign, and you know, the evidence on it is mixed, I mean, why not go ahead and do it? If it's basically like, you know, there's potential for upside, but potential that it, you know, won't work, and the negative is basically, you know, negligible, it's more or less benign, you know, I think we should go ahead and be able to take it. That's the camp I'm from. On that note, Ira, we're just out of time there, brother. So where can people find you online, and when are you coming back on the podcast next?
Bro, I always love being on this podcast with you. It's great. We talk about everything. It's the only place. It's crazy. I guess the world gets to hear it, but so we have good intellectual conversations about medicine and the nature of change, which needs to happen. You can find me on my Instagram, Dr.Ira Price, and you can also go to New Era, Neura Biopharma, Neura Biopharma.com, and you can find out what we're doing.
Okay. Dr. Price, everybody, enjoy your week. We'll be back again soon.
See ya.